What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. And it's been a crazy month. We've done a lot of hard work out here. We've pulled an entire transmission and clutch out of this thing and got it all put back together with our new rear main, our new pressure plate, clutch disc, flywheel, all that stuff. And we swapped a brand new transmission and transfer case in this car. So I did take it out and I did drive it around, and it drove pretty good. I didn't have any real crazy problems, just had to do a little bit of adjustment. And I looked on the comments of one of the videos, and I believe the guy's name is Papa Smurf 988 or 918. I can't remember what the numbers are, but he said, hey, why don't you go and pick up a steel braided line so you can get rid of this soft line right here for the clutch slave cylinder and this accumulator that goes right down to the slave, and increases your pedal rebound and makes your clutch feel so much better. And I've had a 1G that didn't have any of that stuff on it, and it felt great. So I went ahead and had this part on order already just because I had seen it. This is the part number, STM Evo 89 DSM Slave. I believe that's what it is under stmtune.com. It was like 22 bucks when I ordered it. Showed up a couple days later. All it is a threaded fitting that goes into the factory hard line from the master cylinder, and then this end is a banjo fitting which goes down to your slave cylinder to replace that line right there that runs up the hard line, goes into this accumulator, and then up into a rubber hose and into a little fitting right down here. And if you'll notice, it has one of the clips on it that you pull out, just like we have right down here on our shift linkage. We have to pull those up and out to make the cables come out of their little locked in position. So what I'm going to do is right down here, if you can see it, I've been messing around with some WD-40 and trying to get this thing scrubbed off a little bit and get it freed up so I can put a wrench on here and crack this thing free. And once that's free, we're going to remove the entire accumulator assembly and the stock soft line and all this junk down here on the side of the transmission, and just have a nice clean steel braided line. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Things that I'm going to use for this: we're going to need a 10 millimeter line wrench, which is great to have. I like to use a other 10 millimeter for the bleeder on the aftermarket slave cylinder. I like to have one that has a switch on it so I can go from clockwise to counterclockwise. I like to slide this over the bleeder nipple and crack it, and then flip the little switch and then crack it back shut, and have my hose attached to it with a zip tie so it doesn't bleed any air into the system. Pair of pliers, extra 10 mil. I also love to have one of these. These are great. A little torch, a little butane torch, basically to heat up any of your flare fittings or your brake lines, or in this case our little clutch line. If that fitting gives me too much trouble, I can use a tiny little flame that'll heat it up just that little nut, just enough to crack it free, hopefully. And I have had to use one of those on the master cylinder line that goes up to the clutch over there, and it worked out great. So it's been a crazy month. So I want to get this stuff knocked out and be able to finish up braking miles. I've only put about 30 miles on this thing since I've done all that work on it. We're also going to jump under the dashboard, and I'm going to show you guys how to correctly set up your clutch pedal height for free play, travel and throw, and basically how you bleed this thing out to get the most fluid in through the master cylinder down to the slave cylinder to push that fork right down there as far over as possible before it returns. I know there's a lot of write-ups. RRE has a write-up. Jack's Transmission has a great video. It's an older video, it's kind of hard to hear, but he explains it perfectly. Basically what you want to be looking at is your window where the fork sticks out, and you want it to be riding with the pedal all the way up, like mine is right now. You want that fork to be sitting just along the right half of that window. If it's hanging out on the left half of the window, you're going to have to pull the transmission out and shim that ball, the pivot ball, to make sure that it sits right where it is right now in my car. So we're going to start doing this stuff. First thing I got to do is grab my little fluid bleeder that I have right here. This is a little cheapo Harbor Freight one, but it's great for sucking fluids out of the top of the reservoirs, and then we can replace that stuff later once we get this done. I'm going to jump over to the master real fast, suck the fluid out of it, come over here and start working on cracking this line free. Once we have that free, we have to take our banjo bolt off the slave cylinder, put our new line going straight down, fill it up with fluid, bleed it, set our pedal height. our clutch stop switch and make sure that our clutch master rod is adjusted so we get the most throw and don't block off the little bleeder valve that's on the inside of the assembly. So let's get after it. Well, we got this thing pulled out of here. Got the new transmission looking real nice down here. A little overspray on my shifter cable, whatever. So that whole bracket is out. I saved one of the bolts right there in the lower left corner. There's those two right here, these two ears, and then that one right there, they're 12 mils. My banjo bolt was a 15 mil. Looks like this one might be, or actually no, it was 5/8, I'm sorry. Mine may be, the new one may be a little smaller. So here is the assembly that we pulled out, and you can probably see this is the part that goes to the slave cylinder. This is the accumulator bracket and soft hose. That's the bubble flare end that the hard line goes into, and I guess this line can stretch and expand when you push down on the pedal. And from what I could read, this is just basically a cylinder filled with fluid, and it's a real pain to bleed this thing out because you can see it's got that hard top arc right here, so air gets trapped in this a lot. So you're forcing fluid from inside the master down into this hose when you bleed it, and it goes in from the bottom and has to push up and get all that air out and down out the slave cylinder bleeder. I guess this can be troublesome. So I think that's a little kind of bit of what I was experiencing the other day. I don't have any crazy issues or anything like that, but I wouldn't mind having a better feeling pedal. So what we have to do now is just clean off the threads to the OE line, attach this down here where the OE line is, and then this end just goes down to the slave. It's pretty simple. So I'm going to get started doing that, and we'll get this thing bled and start doing adjustments. So before we get into this, the slave cylinder banjo bolt on the new one is a 14 millimeter that comes from STM Tune, and that's this one. The one that I got in my Duralast AutoZone replacement, this one right here, is a 5/8, and side by side you can see the heads are different. And also the line that connects up here, this right here is 3/4 inch adapter. So this nut right here is a 3/4 inch, and we're going to connect this with a 10 mil line wrench right there. So they'll hold this tight with a 3/4, tighten the 10 mil right there in, and this should be good to go. I'm going to clean off the threads and get to it. Alright guys, I got the new fitting put in here, and you can see the line is just kind of hanging out here. I got this to fit right inside of the factory spot still, and there's actually, I don't know if I can show you this, but there's these two little, you can just kind of see them, that shiny part in the center there, that's the nut, and it's 3/4 of an inch. There's like a black line on it right at the tip of my thumbnail. It's like a little tab of metal bent in. There's one on the outside and one on the inside that hold that nut, that 3/4 inch nut, and then you put this clip back in here and it holds this fitting, for our new line nice and tight. Well, the problem with it is, if we go over here, here is the factory line, and 3/4, if you actually look at the shape of this, you can see it's got a flat spot on the bottom and top of it. Once we put a 3/4 inch wrench on it, let's see if I can show you this. There, you can kind of get an idea. You can see the flat spot is got a gap in it. So I would strip this right off if I tried to, crank it with this wrench, obviously. So that space that's there wasn't there on the new one. The new one's a 3/4, and this fit nice and snug around it. So what I had to do is take a file, and I pinched it right here on the table, that fitting, and I filed away just a little bit of the outer diameter of that nut, just on 2 sides of it to close it a little bit. And it actually fit pretty perfectly right back in there. So now that's in, it's not going anyplace. If I wiggle it, she ain't moving at all. So now I can attach the hard line from the master to this with that fitting, and we can run the rest of our stainless steel line down below and hook it up to our slave cylinder. Right, the stainless steel line is in. It's hooked up to the slave cylinder, which was kind of tough. I had to give it a little tweak, and I loosely zip tied it off to the side so it doesn't have too much strain on it right here. This loops back and down. I didn't want anything to get pinched or crimped or whatever. So nice loose S shape there. Now that we've got that part knocked out, on to the bleeding. And the bleeding is pretty straightforward. If you bled brakes, you bled a clutch. Nothing crazy about that, so I'm not going to record that part. I'm going to get that knocked out, and I'm going to show you guys how to properly adjust your pedal height and your clutch pedal travel and free play and the master cylinder rod, which is all pretty confusing if you're reading stuff online. But it's not that bad once you see it and once you do it once, and your clutch should feel better afterwards. Alright guys, so I'm to a point where I've got pretty much all the air bled out of this thing, and before I complete bleeding, there's one more step that I do, and I'll crawl underneath the car, and this is going to be impossible to record, so just bear with me. I'll take a board or have your partner that's helping you bleed push the pedal for the clutch all the way to the floor, and then what we're going to do is we're going to crack the bleeder open and push the slave rod all the way closed, and then we're going to tighten the bleeder again. Then we're going to have the person in the passenger seat, or if you're doing it, go pull the board out, pump the pedal a few times, reinstall the board, and then one more time press that all the way in, crack the bleeder, and then you should be able to top off your fluid once you tighten the bleeder screw back up and bleed it for this last period, pressing the slave shut, refill your reservoir, and you should be done. That's what I'm going to do right now, and I'll see you afterwards to show you how to adjust the pedal. Okay guys, we've got everything completely bled. I still got to put the intake pipe, air filter, and the coolant overflow jug back in here, and the blow-off valve boost vacuum reference. All that's fine. Now we're going to move on to the confusing part. Well, the part that most people find really confusing, and I've gotten a lot of messages about, so I'm going to show you guys what's up real quick. Hopefully this is understandable. Alright, so you see how that rubber gasket going around the outside of where the slave cylinder is. Let me see if I can get a better shot of it. There, you can see it right now. You can see how that little black nub at the bottom, your shift fork, is on the driver's side of the window. If you were to take that line and split it right in half, right up the middle, you want your clutch fork to be at rest just to the right of the center of that window. Now, you're going to have to shim your pivot ball if it's further past that point, if it rests on the left side, and that involves dropping the transmission out, taking out the pivot ball, putting a washer behind it, yada yada. But once you have your new clutch all put together, your new master all put together, and you're all bled out, your rod's probably going to need some adjustment, and your pedal's going to need some adjustment. I know mine does. So if you look, there's let me see. You should be able to reach down here, grab the end of this fork, and push that slave cylinder all the way in. And you can kind of see now it's loose. So that's what you want. There's a little valve that's on the inside of the master cylinder that if you have the clutch rod turned in too far behind your pedal, it will stop that. And that's basically the auto adjustment for the slave cylinder. So as the clutch disc wears down, that little bleeder valve allows fluid to bypass the reservoir and go back into the reservoir. Instead of being stuck in this line down through here, it can bleed back up, and it kind of automatically adjusts itself. Hopefully I explained that correct. Basically, you want that to be moving when you get to your final adjustment. So let me set you guys up real fast. Underneath the dashboard, this is the part where a 6'4", 245-pound guy has a little trouble, so bear with. So down here, there's a few things that you have to take note of. Let's see if I can show you all of them. Up here, you can see the backside of your clutch. Your pedal has a, let me pump this a few times. There is a rod right up here that you have to adjust. There's a lock nut on the back of that rod. Let's see if I can show you it real fast. Where that black piece of metal and the rod meet on the left side, there is a locking nut. And we're going to crack that lock nut free. Also, there's one other thing we have to look at. All right, you see that right there? When the pedal moves forward, there's a little black piece of plastic that comes out, and that is the cruise control switch, and that's what you use for no lift to shift. And you can see there's also a nut on the back of that locking it down. What we're going to do, number one, is we're going to come back here and we're going to take a look at our pedal height. Now, ideally, you want your pedals to all be flush straight across. And I can't show you this, but my clutch pedal is about 1/2 an inch, 3/4 of an inch higher than my brake pedal. And let's see. I don't know the best way to try to show this to you. There, you can kind of see it should be back like this, so they're all even. Instead, it's up too high. I over adjusted it, and now I have to fix it. So first thing we're going to do is crack all the nuts free. We're going to crack the nut free on the back of the clutch pedal on the rod. Then we're going to crack the nut free that has that cruise control switch at the top of the pedal. And you're also going to have to unplug the plug that's on top of the cruise control switch. I can't show you that because my camera won't fit. So I'm going to stick you guys over here and show you what you have to do to adjust this thing. This locking nut is going to be a different size depending on which one of the brands of master cylinders you're using. And I can't recall, but I'm pretty sure that mine is a 12. All right, so I've got the locking nut disconnected from the back of the rod here. Now I have to get up here. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, you can see it. Right up here is the switch that we're going to disconnect and also adjust as well. See if I can get this thing unplugged. All right, there we go. Did that unlock it? Yes. All right, so that unlocks it. Once you get it unlocked, you can twist it, and then you can see the plug side that you have to unscrew or pop the clip open, rather, to get the plug to unplug. See if I can get up in there. This is going to take a little while, guys. All right, so with it unplugged, I don't know if you guys can see it at all. It's a very, very tight spot. Let me see if I can move you a little closer. All right, so you can see right here is our adjustment for our height. And I'm going to screw this in clockwise while my left hand presses the clutch pedal down to right about where stock height is, which is adjacent to the brake pedal. And you're going to have to back off the locking nut far enough so you can screw in the switch so it will hold the pedal even with the brake pedal. And for me, well, that's pretty close. I have to unscrew it a little bit more of that lock nut. All right, and I'm right about there. So now, when I press the clutch pedal down, it comes right back up, and it's even with my brake pedal. So that should provide plenty of throw. All right, so now that we've got that done, we are gonna tighten up the lock nut on the clutch adjustment. So that's this one right up here at the top of the pedal. And then that's where I want my pedal to live. The switch is still engaging. It's still getting hit. That little black piece of plastic pokes out. Let's see if I can get the light up there a little better for you. There we go. Now you can see when I push this, that little black piece right there at the tip of this, you can see the threads. That little black part comes out, and then when the pedal comes up, it depresses it all the way. That's going to stop the pedal. So now I'm going to tighten this lock nut right here so that this doesn't turn or move anymore. And I'm going to plug the switch back in, and I'm going to leave that there. All right, and you don't want to go crazy wild tightening that up. You just want it to be snug so it doesn't unscrew itself. Then we got to find our switch. And we're going to plug her back in. And it only goes in one way, so don't be worried about getting it mixed up. All right, that's back in. So now our clutch pedal comes right back up adjacent to our brake pedal. So now our next point of focus, let's see if I can get you to it, is going to be that rod in the back. So now's the point where most people get a little confused with things. Now this is what I was talking about with the bleeder valve. This rod has a lot of adjustment on it, and you want to adjust this rod so you get the most amount of fluid from every press of the pedal. So you want that rod to push as much fluid as possible all the way down to the slave cylinder so it will push the fork and release the clutch. Now, if you have it all the way in, if you turn this thing in so far that you walk underneath the hood and you grab a hold of the bottom of that fork and you push it towards the driver's side of the car and it doesn't budge, you've got it turned in too far. So here's how I normally do it. I'll start by turning this thing in until it stops, and then I'll back it out 2 full rotations. I'll pump the pedal a couple of times. Now we're going to go back under the hood. Now we're going to come down here to our clutch slave cylinder, which is down here, and we're going to grab a hold of it, and we're going to try to push it. All right, so we can completely push it. Move this stuff out of the way. You can see. All right, so you can completely push this thing. It moves fine. So we didn't block off that bleeder valve. Now, if you go to push this thing over, like we got some space here now, so it's wiggling back and forth. If you've got this thing all the way tightened in so far that you can't move that to the right, well, towards the driver's side, then you have to back it out a little bit more. So we're going to come back under here, and we're going to screw it back in 1 turn clockwise, 1 full turn. So I'm just going to do this real fast. Reach behind here. All right, that's 1 full rotation. Pump the pedal a few times. And you will notice the pedal gets soft when you push the slave cylinder over until you pump it again. That's because you just pushed all the fluid back up into the reservoir. So now we're going to go back under here. We're going to find our slave again. Reach down. And it still pushes all the way over. So we're going to go 1 more rotation back in until we find that point where it stops and we can't push the slave cylinder back. So I'm going to do 1 more rotation in, pump the pedal, come back over here to our slave cylinder again. I'm gonna reach down, grab it. Okay, it still goes. So I'm gonna keep doing this until I find that space where turning it in that one more turn stops that slave cylinder from being able to be pressed back towards the driver's side of the car. All right, made my adjustment, pumped the pedal by hand. Come back over here. All right, we found it. If you'll see, oh, all these hoses are getting directly in my shot, guys. Sorry, but you can see it in the background there. It's not going anywhere. I can't push it at all. So now that we found that spot, we're going to go back in the car. We're going to unscrew it a half a turn, pump the pedal, come check it again, see if we can move that slave cylinder. So first we're going to unscrew it, half a turn, pump the pedal. Now let's go check it. It's still locked in. Can't move it at all. So we're going to go back, do another half a turn, and we should end up with some movement after this turn right here. I feel like we're pretty close to that sweet spot. Unscrewing half a turn, pump the pedal by hand. Let's reach down in there and check this slave cylinder. All right, so now it moves. You can see we have movement. So that's the point at which we're going to go ahead and lock this thing down at. That's the point at which we want to leave our master cylinder, which is brand new. Our slave is brand new, and all of our components have been replaced. So our adjustment is set. So we're just going to spin this lock nut into position, make sure that we don't end up turning that rod at all. And we are going to get our wrench and we are going to lock that nut down. Let's see. All right, she's locked down. Verify everything is good and working still. The clutch pedal feels stronger than it's ever felt before. And I think that's largely to do with the fact that we don't have that accumulator on there anymore, because I fear there was air bubbles trapped in there. So, all right, now we're gonna go, now that everything's nice and tight, we're gonna go back under the hood. We're gonna verify that the slave cylinder still can be compressed by hand, which it can, I already checked it. And we're gonna call that a day. Now, if you need to make further adjustments, if the engagement point, the friction point, which is when you let your foot, you put it in first gear and you start to let up off the clutch, if your friction point is all the way at the bottom, like a 1/4 inch off the ground, just starting to grab, then you can make some more adjustments to this by moving it back. If you move it inward any further, you're going to block off that valve. So if you unscrew that rod just a little bit more, there's a little bit more space to make some adjustments. So your friction point is a couple inches up off the floor, not all the way at the bottom of its range of motion or all the way at the top of its range of motion. And you also want to verify that you don't end up with improper amount of travel on the clutch fork. So we're going to go over to the front of the car and I'm going to put you guys on the tripod and show you what I'm talking about. All right, guys, sorry for the blurry shot. This thing is really zoomed in. Now that you can see, our fork is still to the right side of the window. Now we want to make sure that everything has enough motion, enough movement, that it comes from its point right here all the way across to the left side of the window and then back again on the right side of the window, the driver's side. So I'm going to hop in the car and I'm going to pump the pedal a few times. And I guess we're going to see what happens here. guys, we're all finished up. We've got our new line in here, and that's going to conclude the clutch, transmission, and master cylinder replacement. All that stuff's done. I'm going to list it off. We've got the rear main seal, we've got the new flywheel, pressure plate, clutch disc, transmission, transfer case, clutch master cylinder, clutch slave cylinder, steel braided line, and we deleted the accumulator. A lot of stuff's been done in the last month, and today is the icing on the cake. We're now ready to go take this thing out on the road and actually do some break-in driving finally. I only put about, I think, 4 or 7 miles on it so far, and things started to feel a little spongy, so I just wanted to, obviously, like I said in the master cylinder video, I wanted to make sure I got everything correct before we break in this new clutch, and it feels good. It's gone through a couple of heat cycles so far, and this transmission shifts better than my last one, 100%, even more than the last one. So there's obviously something wrong with the other one. Not only did we have a bunch of brass and metal particulates inside of the transmission when we drained the fluid out of the old one, but I don't know, I'm thinking there might be a fork broken in there or something. I'm not sure. But anyways, guys, I've got a little war mark on my thumb I gotta go take care of. Something small. That's what happens when you're out here wrenching. But thanks for sticking through, watching this to the end, and in the next episode we're gonna be out driving this thing around, doing some break-in miles, and I guess I'll just give you guys a heads up on what I think of the XTD clutch and how it's performing during break-in compared to the stock stuff. So thanks for watching, guys. If you want to take and support the channel further, make sure to check out todaysprojectguide.com, pick up some merch. Follow us over on Instagram. A lot of you guys got to see some cool stuff over there over the last month. We had a huge car show in Lake George, New York, and there's a bunch of cool videos and some interesting stuff there. But I'll see you in the next one.